Well, lucky me, and actually, lucky you. We've got a pretty cool guest, and I'm going to say pretty cool. Consider yourselves fortunate today, my friends, because this gentleman doesn't do interviews on the other side very often. Now, let me tell you, if you have seen his show, and if you haven't, you are going to head yourself, after you listen to the show today, over to a moment in history. If you love music as much as I do, and I know that every single one of you love music because you would never listen to my show otherwise, because I talk about it too much. But Mr. Tyrone DuBose talks about it in a very different way. I've listened to his show, and you know what? There's something really powerful about a song, but there's something really meaningful when you know where that song comes from, or you know where that artist comes from, or you know part of that artist's story. So look at, I'm going to get right into it because, you know, I always tell you, you are something. And today, audience, you are open. And we are going to have a conversation with someone that's going to be open and transparent, because that's literally how we met. So before I introduce him to the stage, let me tell you, you would have to have never known my name not to not know about the 262 project. And we are just about to head down to Emmy's again, and we're going to be hanging out with Tyrone. We're going to be stealing his gin out of the swag bag. We've already established that pre-show. And anyways, we actually talked about how being open really bridged the conversation and bridged what happened between us. And it was at the Oscars gifting suite this year, the beginning of this year. And I didn't see him. I didn't meet him. I didn't have a long conversation with him. I saw him, but I didn't have a long conversation with him. It wasn't until he contacted me after and asked for a picture. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's about 2,000 pictures that we had from us being at the gifting suite. And there's this cool guy on my messenger that says, hey, do you happen to have a picture of me signing the poster? So, you know, we always have a Natsukashi Inc. poster because they did the cover of the book. And in my head, I was like, oh man, there's 2,000 pictures. Who's this guy wanting me to go find in 2,000 pictures a picture of his mom? So I was like, but that's a cool request. I don't get that very often. Anyways, I phoned him. To get more data, to get more information. And he was actually on set. So I said who I was, and I'm like, hey, I'll call you back later. He goes, no, this is super important. I will let him take it from that conversation, because it was really from having an open conversation of two people that hadn't really spent a lot of time together and hearing something fairly transparent that brought something really, really beautiful into fruition. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I want you to meet a really cool guy that's doing cool things. Yes, we're going to dig in a little bit. Yes, he's going to tell us all the things you should never do if you want to be an entrepreneur in the music industry. He's going to share some stories, but I'm going to stop talking now because that's a good thing to happen. And Tyrone, we're going to bring you on to Mission Accepted Podcast. Thank you for making us your second show that you've been interviewed on this year.
Well, thank you, first of all, so very much. It means an awful lot to me to be on your show. But more importantly, before I begin, I need to say thank you to you, not just only for finding the picture, but the opportunity for me to do something for my mother. Although she's gone, it meant more to me than you can ever imagine. It was a big deal for me, and I can't thank you enough for that.
No, absolutely. So look at what Tyrone's chatting about is that when we had this conversation about finding this picture, it was actually him signing a poster. Now, I believe you signed, did you sign in your mom's name? You signed your mom's name on that poster because that poster was on the table of the 262 book table that we had at the Oscars event, because we were gifting that book. And if you don't know about the book, this is your first time meeting me, because that book has been part of the largest International Women's Day speakership and authorship in the world. And really, that whole project is for women and those that support women. So in my world, we're kind of hoping that that's everybody. But when I got the call from you and you were saying that you signed it in your mom's name, and we had this dialogue about how you had lost your mom, and that was, you know, incredibly unfortunate, with a really, not common way of losing, someone close to your life. And I'll let you talk about that if you want to, but when you shared that with me, I can tell you exactly where I was. That's how you know when moments are magical or meant to be's or whatever you want to call them. I personally call them God jobs. And it was like, my body was like, we need to do more. And when you said, what, legacy for your mom. And then out of my mouth is, well, if you want to leave legacy, let's make that happen. Because the book that we ended up putting your mom's story in, and what a beautiful picture. We were talking pre-show about some media numbers. That book has hit over 5.12 million media impressions. And I don't say that to kind of like, hey, our book's done well. But hey, our book's done well. But the meaning behind the book of this collective of 262 women that represent women around the globe, and the criteria for that book was gumption. And you talked about how powerful your mom was in relationship to like just what she had on her plate, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it meant a lot. And I tell you, it was almost surreal being able to write my mother's name on a book. It was the first time in my life, in my adult life particularly, that I wrote her name on a book. It mattered to me somehow or another. I felt a sense of empowerment. Of course, being around all of these powerful women who were there, this particular place, and the fact that you allowed me to sign my mother's name meant everything. It meant everything to me. And the opportunity in which you gave me to tell the story about my mother was just as important. And I can't thank you enough for that as well.
Well, I think that's what it's about, right? I think that, good humans doing good work, and how that shows up, I think that's the thing about putting one foot in front of the other that we talk about a lot on this show, because people are taking missions, they're taking risks, they're taking challenges, or they're sitting listening to the show going, you guys are crazy. But we talk about that venture, and I talk about the life of unforeseen. And I think when you come into your own gig, when you start to build your own business or side business, or go forward or venture into something that you don't really know a whole lot about, that I say all unforeseen comes to play. It's actually a Scottish proverb. And these are the things that happen that you can't figure out whether it's a great move to do before you get into something, because you just can't see those things because they're not in play. Who would have known that we would meet, and who would know that, I found a picture, and who would know, or the picture you're looking for, and who would know these things? And then all of a sudden you had a moment and I had a moment. And then, Carmel, our beautiful journalist and podcast goddess, put it all together and helped write this message that
We love Carmel.
Now will impact many. And that was the whole idea, and is the whole idea around the project. So
It
yeah.
was the biggest, not only was it just for the project itself, it was me being able to do something that I was never able to do for my mom while she was here, and to give her the honor that she deserved. Because one of the things in which I learned from her, and I'll just briefly say, it was September the 2nd, 1989. I was 15 minutes after I had got married, I found out that my mother was murdered. And it was surreal to some degree for me. Then, I only imagine one of the best days of your life turns into the worst day at that point. And then throughout this process, I was diligent in making sure that the man who murdered my mother stayed in prison. They found him after 7 years, and they found him. And afterwards, I made it a point to go to every single parole hearing that he had in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm originally here in Los Angeles, and I made it a point to do everything that I could do. But the most important thing is, it was empowering for me, because it made me realize that but one of the things that we don't do, we don't stand up enough for women, and for our mom particularly. I think a lot of it we just take for granted. We just believe that somehow or another it's what a mom's supposed to do. We forget those things, and I learned that as I got older. So I believe that the most important thing that I could do was to be able to show her that there was going to be one man in her life that stood up for her entire life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think the beautiful piece that ties that together is that you have a show about history. And,
Yes.
I always say word in print is history. Like once you put word in print, it's registered with that government, and it's part of the history. It's like part of the history books, and it's legacy in a whole different way, a whole different way.
It
But
was
that's how,
the I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just about to say it was so important, but none of this would have happened without you saying yes. And that was the key for me. And it made me realize just the importance for that, no matter what it took. I mean, even going back to high school for 4 years, I hadn't graduated. I had a ninth grade education, and although I was successful, I knew that everyone in my family graduated except for me. And I remembered my mother going to high school to get her high school diploma, and I just said, um, I need to go back and do all 4 years. And I remember one of the teachers saying, you're a celebrity. These people are not going to leave you alone. You can take your GED. And I remember saying to her, no, the problem is that I've taken the short route all my life. I need to know that I could finish something. And that was important to me.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's what I was going to say. I was like, let's talk a little bit about you, Mr. Tyrone, and share with the audience what it is that you do. Share with us on some of the ways that you got there. I mean, you just shared one of them. You are a celebrity. You are well known. We talked about being open. What's some of the things that you can share with the audience about, there's people out there that they hear the word celebrity and they have an automatic thought, right?
Yes.
They have an automatic thought. Even though we know on the inside that there's, I always say celebrities are entrepreneurs with like really good photographers around them. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still a good friend of mine is a 5-time Emmy Award winner, and I gave her a call. She's like, man, I'm looking for my next thing, I'm
Yes.
looking for my next thing. It
Yeah.
has a ride, but that's not how it's seen or heard. So share with us a little bit about the show, how it came to be, what you got going on.
I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. First of all, thank you as well as your audience for allowing me to share your space with you today. I'm originally from Cincinnati. As a child or a teenager, I listened to this gentleman named Casey Kasem from American Top 40. He used to do the countdown every week, and for some reason, I really gravitated toward this man when I lived in Cincinnati. I loved how he did the countdown, how he discussed, where they were on the charts, and somehow or another, I remember always listening. It was a big deal to me. As time went on, I moved out here to Los Angeles trying to find my way, but it wasn't, believe it or not, to be in television or radio or anything. It was just trying to figure it out some kind of way as I got older. And it wasn't until the 30s until one day I got a chance to go to an event and I saw, Mr. Kasem there. And I was like, oh my God, it was him. He had on this shirt that said radio studio on it. And I was like, I ran in the bathroom, I wanted to make sure I looked presentable. And I walked over to him. I said, Mr. Kasem? And he said, call me Casey. And I went, man, we're not on the same level. I'm just going to be Mr. Kasem for me. But I remember I spoke with him about what it was in which I wanted to do. And he asked me, I asked him about a question or something. He goes, well, I probably won't look at it, but he gave me some advice. And I remember him saying, well, I said, sir, I just want you to know, I want to be just like you one day. I'm going to be like you one day. And Deborah, he says, I'll see you at the top, son. And so this gentleman that was next to him called me and he says, send him the radio thing. He'll look at it. And I sent it to him. He called me and he had me to come to his house. And when I came to his house, I saw all these cartoon characters he played. Scooby Doo, like some of Hot Wheels, some of these other commercials, Casper the Friendly Ghost, a lot of the commercials that we heard on cartoons and television. But his kindness was overwhelming. But he was the one who told me that he thought it would be a good idea for me to learn the R&B charts, because I told him I only knew the pop charts because I listened to him. But he thought that changing it to R&B would be something that I needed to do. He bought me the books, and from then on, I started becoming better at learning the charts. And one day I got to a television program and I was standing next to a man who I had no idea was a producer of a show that I've been on for the last 10 years called Unsung.
Wow. That's an incredible story. That's an incredible story. It's the story that people hope always happens. But you know what? Because I just had this conversation today, and how interesting. And I had this conversation yesterday, and I did a presentation, and I was talking to a group of entrepreneurs that wanted to make their way into having relationships with celebrities. And I said, well, and I'll just be blunt. I was like, well, honey, they're probably not going to call you. You might need to go to them. And I find it very interesting that you saw he was at an event and you walked across the room. You walked across the room. I mean, that's a critical piece. Like, that's a critical piece. Whether you feel like you're on the same stage, whether they have more information, whatever it is, I think it's that human to human
One of
Exactly.
yeah, I totally agree, Deborah. And one of the things that I had to learn, the truth is, I really wasn't sure where I was headed. At one time, I was going to Barstow, California, which is 145 miles from where I live at every other weekend to be on the radio from midnight to 6, getting the minimum wage. It was right in between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. And I'd be on the air from midnight to 6, getting $45 every 2 weeks, somehow or another, just trying to find my way. And what I had to teach people all the time is your struggle will eventually become your strength. You just need to figure out where you belong and be okay with that. A lot of times they think it's when you're a public figure, they think it's all sunshine and rainbows, but we struggle just like everyone else. But I learned as I've been around so many people in my journey, the being kind to people and remembering that the one time that they meet you, just be kind, so that way they'll always remember the good in you. And
Mhm.
that's the thing that has helped me to go to another level. But it hasn't gone without my struggles. Like so many people out here who try to find their way, I had to try to figure out my way too, and it wasn't always easy. And just one of those things was at in the height of where I was at some point, I found out that I had cancer. I had colon cancer, and um, I had to somehow or another repair, rebuild, renew. And admittedly, I just had recently posted. Although when I met you, I might as well just be perfectly honest. I had already found out then that I had cancer then as well. And so for the last 5 months here, I just finished radiation 2 weeks ago today. And, part of that was me just not being able to quit and, recognizing that my name will just not be associated with failure of any sort. So at any point, I just continue to keep moving.
Wow. Well, I am hoping that we're on the other side
I am. They
and
caught in
and
time again.
yeah, and what captures me about that is, again, just it really isn't about our titles. It is really about the mission. It is really about the message. There's it's important. We talked about that earlier about being open and being transparent, and like it or not like it, it can get difficult. It can get difficult because there's this thing that goes on in the minds of people being transparent. How are people going to take that? Are they going to hire me for their event? Are they going to invite? Like all of those things go through one's mind. Even people at offices, it's like, I don't want people to. I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter. Like, I mean, this is just I'm like, I was like, oh, it's almost like a medical condition, right? I did not tell where I was working till I was showing enough that wasn't hamburgers and hot dogs I was eating. I was like, hey, just thought I'd say, because it can be perceived differently. I mean, I think it's a little different now. My daughter's, she's been on the planet for a while, but
One of the,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I had to learn, as many struggles as I've had, I had to learn people don't want to hear the story of the person who had everything. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
want to hear the stories of men and women who endured some sense of pain and turned their struggles into a gift. I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I I found myself, particularly even after being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I remember looking out in the audience going, wow, I wish this person was here, this person. And I had to stop myself because I said, no, whoever's here is supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
That's who's here today.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, I had to find a way not to be ordinary. I said, I needed to find a way to be legendary. I needed to find my way. And there were movies that were in between them that really stuck out to me. That, when I was at my worst moments, particularly the Rocky movies, for some reason, they always stuck out to me. Rocky was a big hero for me. It was a big deal because at every turn he found a way to try to make it work. And I can remember so many of those sayings that people had said in between it. And we have to have somebody to hold on to, right? And that was what I held on to.
That is crazy that you say that. That is crazy that you say that, because I feel that same way about the series. And I'll tell you, when Creed 1 came out, I went to the theater about 5 times by myself to watch that movie. And my son's like, because he's used to that with music movies. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I saw Dylan. So I was like, why did you guys win? But there's a scene in Creed 1 where he finally convinces Rocky to train him. And so, they're in the gym, and then Rocky takes him over to the mirror.
The mirror,
Yeah.
yes.
And he says to him, that is your biggest opponent. And when I really need it, like when I really need it, when I'm in the thick of it, when I'm like in it and swimming through, I watch that part of the movie. I actually have it on my soundtrack, that song, because it reminds me that the only thing I'm up against is myself. That's it.
One of the biggest competitions that we have, and it's a guaranteed loss, is you against you. That was one of the things I learned. That's ironic. You think of that part with Creed, and I think of the one with Rocky 2, when Mickey went over to him and he said, this guy just doesn't want to win, He wants to bury you. He wants to humiliate you. He wants to prove to the whole world that you were nothing but some kind of a freak the first time. I remembered that because in my mind, nobody ever wants you to win. They just want to be there in case you do. And that's what I had to remember. And that helped me a lot. Even when you said it was Creed, I remember when Apollo Creed kept asking the guy, why don't you want me to fight Rocky again? And I remember that the coach said to him, I saw you beat that man like you beat no man in his life. And he just kept coming. And at that part, I remembered thinking about that when I saw Rocky 1. I was 17 years old. And I had what was called a TWA. That's a teeny weeny afro for a few bunch of people out there, in case you need to know. And I took someone out on a date. And I remember her saying, Deborah, she said, oh my God, he keeps getting beat up really bad. But I remember saying, but he won't quit. And I don't know why that was one of the things that stuck to me. So even when I was going to radiation every morning, I got up at 6:25 every morning here in Los Angeles. I'd take a walk and I would listen to the fights. Rocky 1, Rocky 2, I would listen to them on YouTube every day. And so I get it. We have to find something that's going to make us move. And that made me move.
Oh, that's crazy that we both have that. I mean, it's not even anything that I really talk about. Well, most people, I did, and I did boxing, but I didn't fight anyone. I just fought my trainer because I was, that's what it was. It was just about
Mental.
that. It was a form of exercise, and it was a form of, I just really, wow, that's so interesting that same thing.
But we all have it in us. We don't think so, but every one of us to some degree can look back on something in which we did or didn't do, or something that has held us back when we've tried to find a way to push forward. All of us do. And while a lot of people believe it's luck, in my head, there's 1,440 minutes in a day. And the goal is, how much time are you spending on your dream? And that's what you get. That's what I've learned.
That's incredible. I'm like, wow, I just met my Rocky brother. That's so incredible. Look, one of the things that a lot of people ask is exactly that. It's like, they're like, how do you make it? How do you do it? Like, how is it? And I think that people have probably got like a very good, strong sense of strength and gumption in making those decisions. What are some of the things, and I think this is an interesting question. So on your way up to where you are right now, doing what it is that you're doing, is there anything that you would have done differently? And not from the philosophy as everything happens by mistake, but it's like, what are some of the things that you would do differently? Is there anything that you would have done?
Yeah, good question. One of the things I had to learn is that I realized, earlier I mentioned there was 1,440 minutes in a day. And the question began for me ultimately, how much time am I spending on the dream, the journey? You can't have a full-time dream putting in part-time work. And I learned that. And so even here in the studio here at my home, I had to learn, even when I come home every day, in my studio, I'll write down everything that I need to do, Deborah, and then I'll number it in the order that it needs to be done. And I do that because I wanted to discipline myself and make sure that there was an end game to where I was trying to get to. And I also had to recognize what made me different. What made me different? There's 100 people that do what I do out here. And I remember when I was on television, people kept saying music historian, music historian. I went, no, I'm on an R&B show. I'm going to be known as the R&B historian because I'm doing R&B. But the most important thing is that you've got to believe that you belong there. And along the way, you're not going to go with the same people that you started with. And you got to be okay with those people who fall off. A lot of times we're busy trying to look back, wondering why they don't see it or why they don't understand. And the biggest thing that I had to realize, Deborah, and even to your audience, I had to recognize they're not me. It's not fair for me to believe that everybody thinks like me. They don't want what I want, so they won't do what I do. And I had to be okay with it, not in an arrogant sense. But I remember when I first started being on television, at first everybody laughed and they joked. But when I got into the Hall of Fame, the first thing a lot of times I heard was, oh, you think you're something now. They didn't see the fact that I was driving around in 105-degree heat with no air condition or barely enough gas. They didn't see that I had the same struggles as everybody else out here. I'm no different than anybody else. The only difference between me and everybody else is that I was willing to keep going. Some people think that it's okay to just be enough, but it's just not for me.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I had to stop doing, and one of the things if I went back in time and talked to my younger self or someone else, was apologize. I found that I was apologizing for who I was. I was the first entrepreneur in my family. This wasn't kind of, who could have seen this? I don't see myself as other people see myself sometimes. People say things like, and they've said it, they're like, oh my gosh, do you ever sleep? Do you ever this? Do you ever that? And I'm like, just because I don't put my personal life maybe on, on the same place I put my business life, but a lot of times I would find myself apologizing or saying sorry or justifying or
And
almost like,
defending.
hey, or having to say, like, I don't think you understand. I really enjoy what I do. They're like, oh, you work all the time. And I'm like, well, just take my work and replace it with your pickleball, or your stamp collecting or whatever it is that you do, because this is what gives me fuel and peace. And I just happen to be fortunate enough that it's called my job. But I remember when I stopped telling myself to stop apologize, then I was like, look I'm just a creative. And I was like, I'm a creative that likes to build. I just happen to like to build business and companies and media. And some people like to build and paint different genres. And I found I was giving like analogies. And then one day I was like, I was talking about it on a show. I was being a guest on a show, and I was talking the other day about it. And I said, in Robin Hood, the one with Kevin Costner, and there was his, I don't want to say sidekick because that's like a cowboy movie, but he had the gentleman with him. And there was a little girl that walked up to him because she'd never seen anyone dark skinned. So he was sitting on the ground, and there was this Robin Hood scene. They were in Sherwood Forest, and she walked up and she's like, did God paint you? Because she'd never seen anyone that wasn't, pale skin. And he was like, Allah made me this way. And I thought that's just really true for how I think and live. And so I just feel like, look, man, this is just how I was made. Like, this is.
I think that after the first time I had cancer, it put me in a different place and space. But this particular time, after knowing now that I've survived once again, there's something that I started with. I get, if we're lucky, we all get 75 years and 75 different seasons. And for a long time, and I was thinking about this today. Okay, now I got my life back again. Then I kept doing this, looking back, thinking somehow or another, I needed to repair what was behind me and not being able to see what was in front of me. I'm too busy looking in the rearview mirror instead of the biggest pane of glass that's here. That was the biggest thing. I stopped justifying and defending, not just to myself, but to the children that I should have done better with. I've done my best. I'm not living the rest of my life concerned about who's no longer here. I'm okay. And I think once I got there, I'm okay now. That was the hardest part. Just like you, like for a long time, I'm sitting here thinking, well, I'm just trying to do this. What am I doing? I'm asking for these people to think like me. They're not me, so it's not fair. So once I started realizing it was okay, then things started getting better.
Yeah.
I was okay. I stopped looking in the rearview mirror. The biggest pane of glass in the car is the front mirror. That's what you're supposed to be looking at. The
Right.
smallest, where most of us get caught, is looking in the rear view mirror, because we're looking in
No.
the rear view mirror longer than the biggest pane of glass.
No, no, no. That's a great lesson. And I think that's why I like to ask that question, because many times we share the success and do this and make sure you call and make sure you walk across the room and say hi to your hero or what have you. And then there's things that we do or have experienced that I wouldn't do that again. I would curb that, quickly. Didn't work, or, trying to, they talk about the definition of insanity. It's like, when you're trying to make something work and work and work and work, just try it, just move over 5%. You know what I mean? Just try 5% over, go over here and do something different. So
I was trying for a long time. I think one of the biggest issues I had, I would call it putting myself on trial constantly over the things that I didn't do right. But the verdict was always the same: guilty. You're not going to change what's already happened. You're going to have to be okay being okay that you're not going to change it. Once I got there, particularly now when I've got this sudden burst of like, okay, you got your life back. Now what are you going to do? And once you go there, I'm okay with who isn't here anymore. Once
yes.
I got over that, then I saw myself moving. Then I'm okay. I stopped doing that. I'm never going to get to the end of the street if I'm throwing a rock at every dog who barks at me. I just stop.
Well, I think that we talk a lot about that in the world of success, entrepreneurship, business, life. It's the head game, right? It's the head
Yes.
game, which is why we both resonate so much to Rocky, because people win boxing matches, people win at life, people win at their business, people become more successful, when they have the right head, right? When they have the right head game for the right head mindset for the game that they're just about to play.
But it begins with you being able to be okay with who you are from the start. Start
Absolutely.
from today with who you are and being okay. Don't look in the rear view mirror. Keep moving. There's a lot of times that I thought that maybe I should have been on this network or that network, or, hey, how come these people passed me up? I don't have to concern myself with that anymore. It really doesn't matter who's ahead of me. I'm okay now because now I recognize where I can go. My struggles have been my strength, and I had to be okay, because the whole time I thought that these struggles were holding me back, Deborah, and to your fans out there, it really was giving me the tools to become one of the greatest. And so for me, there was no more second chances and no more blaming others for the problems that I had in my life. They were gone. I just moved
And you know
forward.
what? And that's a certain kind of fuel. And
Yes.
that's a certain kind of fuel.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
that's a different kind of competence. You walk differently, you think differently. And I think more importantly, when you have that kind of shift, it's felt. You feel it, and it's
Yes.
felt, and it reverberates, and different doors open at different levels of energy and different levels of competence of oneself.
Yes,
Right? It's
indeed.
not competent ego, it's competence of oneself. And different people feel that, and they walk across the room, or a phone call comes and you're like, what? That's cool. That's
Yeah. The connection that people try to make is to somebody here when you should be making the head and the heart the connection. If these connect, the game is over. That's
yeah.
what I had to learn. And once I learned that, then it was no more other issues for me anymore. I just felt like now I've got to move. I've got to, what's going to make me different? So when they say call that R&B historian guy, it doesn't mean that it's someone else or something different. But I recognize I had to be okay with me being this man right here. No more putting myself on trial. No more worrying about what everybody else thought. And for those people who are listening today, stop looking at you versus you. It's a competition that no human being in life has ever won. You'll never win the competition between yourself. Nobody has.
Yeah. Right on. That's a great message to kind of lean out on. And so I'm going to ask you this question, which is going to be probably much more difficult for you than the average bird, I'm going to say. But people know how much we love music, and we ask a question at the end of each show. Now, let's say that you're going to go for on a private island, just you, and you're going to be hanging out there for a while. you've got this suitcase and you've got room in that suitcase for one album, just one, just one. There's a nice record player on that private island for you to play it. What could you not imagine not listening to? Either the song, the album, the singer. Who do you got to have with you on that private island?
Oh, y'all killing me. But you know what immediately came to mind? The Stylistics. The Stylistics was an early group in the 70s that had 10 straight top 10 singles, but they sung very, they sung in harmony. I'm a big harmony guy. I love that. But I could listen to that album constantly. And it reminded me of my mom, who used to always listen to that album every morning before she went to work. And then I went on tour with them, which made it even better. So yeah,
Ooh.
so I could say the Stylistics album, I could listen to the whole entire thing. Yeah, I could.
That's magic. That's magic. That's a trifecta. In horse
Yeah,
racing, that's a trifecta. Like
yeah.
your
Or
mom, you yeah.
that being said, although I love R&B, I could also take Elton John, which was one of my favorites, by the way. I love Elton John.
Oh
Love
my
Elton
goodness. We're gonna have to have a drink together when I see you in
John.
a couple of weeks in the Emmys. Elton John was one of my all-time and has been
Mine
my
too.
all-time
Mine
favorite.
too.
As a solo male artist, he's right up there for me, and being able to see him a couple
I went
times.
to this Oscar party and I remember walking over to him and going, Sir Elton, I said, you used to have a Monopoly set. I said it had sterling silver houses and real gold hotels. And I said, they cost you about $5,000. And he turned around and said, how do you know that? I went, I heard Casey Kasem saying on Philadelphia Freedom when that was the #1 song in America. He just started laughing. I took a picture with it. He was like, that's good, perfect.
Oh my goodness! Now we're gonna be. We should try to find one of those sets. Oh my goodness! That's it. Okay, that's our new goal. I'm writing that down. I'm writing that down. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Okay, so if anyone out there knows where there is a Monopoly set that Elton John made, I expect you to dial in. I expect you to call us. Yeah, that would be amazing. That'd be amazing. Oh
But
my
Elton John
goodness.
was a big part of my childhood, but in my teenage years, I was
Yeah.
really big on him. And I remember, I mean, he pulled through in the middle of disco. I mean, this guy was huge. First album in history to be a #1, not once, but twice with Captain Fantastic and Rock of the Westies. And I was a big Barry Manilow fan too. I liked it.
That was awesome. Look, we could be talking for a while, and I think that we will be. What an incredible, no wonder we connected. I mean, it was just like meant to be, meant to be. We must have changed our energy. Thank you so much for sharing some time with us today on Mission Accepted. We so appreciate you. I look forward to meeting you in person. Again, this time a little differently. We're going to have a conversation. And the beautiful thing for you, sir, is that right now, as we're speaking, being delivered to the hotel is over 100 books, of that book of which your mom is in.
I cannot thank you and your staff enough. And I want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, there's very few things that I have ever done in life for my mother. She passed away when I was 29, but I'm telling you, what you allowed me to do in this space is more than you can ever imagine. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. God bless. Thank you so much. You did more for me than any human being you could ever imagine. My mother and I thank you. Me and my mother, we thank you.
Oh, well, I don't even know what to say to that other than thank you. And that's what we're here for. And if any of you out there would like to be in touch with this gentleman, there is going to be all the information in the show notes. We are so proud to have had you on the show today. If you'd like to be sitting where he's sitting, then we expect a phone call, and a little set of Monopoly from Elton John is going to get you on the show. Going to get you on the show. And for those of you that want to be on the show on the women's channel, pop on over to debdrummond.com and take a look at the women's channel, because there is hundreds of incredible stories there for you to listen to as well. And we will have Tyrone's up very shortly. Thank you again for being with us. And as always, to our audience, we love you. We appreciate you. Until we see you again, you be well and you stay groovy. Bye for now.
God bless.